Hello, everyone. Coming to you today from sunny Omaha, Nebraska, where we've finally reached positive temperatures today. So everybody's feeling great here. As you can see, I now have a fresh tan from my time in sunny Omaha, Nebraska. No, just kidding. I got back from vacation to some pretty cold temperatures. Glad to be back anyway. Real quick presentations for you today. As always, this is being recorded, so if you miss something, if you zone out or have a phone call that comes in, we will send out the recording afterwards so that you can go back and re-review some of the sections that you might have missed. Just because we are recording, we do have everybody's lines on mute. That makes for a nice clean recording with no background noise for everybody to listen to at their pleasure. But just because we have you on mute doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. We love questions. We'll take questions throughout the webinar through the question function on the right-hand side of your screen. I will be monitoring that, and as questions come up, if they're relevant at the time, we'll answer them then. If it's better saved for the end, we'll answer them at the end, but we will make sure all questions get answered. Hopefully on your screen, you can see a slide with a nice picture of a sunny beach that financial brokerage and hopefully many of you will be traveling to in 2022. We just finalized some of our incentive trips for next year, so I wanted to share those with you. The first one is to Sandals Bay in the Bahamas. Not only is it a great location, but the resort is very nice as well. You can qualify if you focus on life insurance sales, $45,000 of Tier 1 life premium, which North American would be a Tier 1 carrier with us. $45,000 of Tier 1 life premium. If you focus on annuities, $1.125 million of Tier 1 annuity premium. Or if you write both, any combination of those that will equal 45,000 success shares, very attainable. We're looking for business submitted in 2021 to accompany us on the trip in 2022. The second trip that we are have announced is a trip that we've done in the past and gotten rave reviews on, and so we're bringing it back. That's the Oak Lake Lodge and Outpost up in Canada. If you're not familiar with this location, so we fly up close to the border, rent some vans, drive about an hour further north, and then get picked up by a float plane, which is the only way to get to this lake. There are no roads that lead to this lake. You have to fly in by float plane, and we go up fishing for a couple of days with guided fishermen on every boat. They take you out in the morning, you go to shore at lunch and cook what you caught and have lunch there, and then they do dinners every night. So if you like fishing, even if you are not an experienced fisherman, you have the guides with you, a beautiful remote lake, so second to none type fishing trip. This one is a little bit less qualification, $35,000 of Tier 1 life premium, or any combination of 35,000 success shares. And you can qualify for both trips. So doing the quick math, 80,000 success shares would get you a spot going to Sandals and on the fishing trip. So I won't take any more time. I just wanted to make that announcement since we have recently finalized those. Some of you may have not been familiar with those trips. But the bulk of what we're talking about today is North American company. Andrew Herrera here is with us. He's one of our key partners from a carrier perspective, and he's got some exciting new updates to share. I know North American has joined in working out a deal to develop a proprietary index for their index products, which is something for everybody to pay attention to. Sustained low interest rates and market volatility puts enormous pressure on carriers to be able to maintain caps and participation rates on S&P 500 type indexes. And so for carriers to go think outside of the box and introduce these other indexes just shows that they're committed to being innovative and they're committed to the performance of their IUL products. And I'm glad that North American has a brand new index, and we can talk about that. And I know Andrew's got some other things to share as well, but without further ado, I am going to kick it over to Andrew and let him take it away.
Thank you, Tim. And thank you, everyone else at the Financial Brokerage for allowing me to be with you today. So hopefully you all can see my screen. Tim, if your mic is still on, just can you let me know if you can see the screen there?
Yes, we can. Looks great.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Again, appreciate the opportunity. Really, thank you all for taking the time today of your busy schedule to join me. As Tim mentioned, Andrew Herrera, Regional Vice President with North American. I know he was joking, saying he was in sunny Omaha. Well, I'm just 2 hours away from him in sunny Des Moines. So I'm sure most of you, especially if you're in the middle part of the country, have experienced the cold that we've had this week. It's days like yesterday, where I question my sanity and why I live here in the Midwest. But hopefully spring and warmer temperatures are just around the corner. What I wanted to do, as Tim mentioned, is really highlight some of the changes that we've seen in the accumulation IUL space, and then go on and talk about some of the opportunities there. And so I'm going to start by talking maybe about some regulations or some changes you've heard related to AG 49A and also the more recent 7702. Again, I'll just briefly cover those areas, talk about the new index that Tim mentioned, our proprietary fidelity index, which is a volatility control index. And then again, I really want to highlight some of the opportunities that I think we will be seeing later this year. So AG 49A, what was it? That was a modification to the Actuarial Guideline 49. So AG 49 was a regulation on IUL that was implemented several years ago. And really what it did is, if any of you wrote IUL or are familiar with IUL in the past, when IUL first came on the scene, it was almost like the Wild Wild West. You could illustrate, a carrier could illustrate almost whatever they wanted to, right? Depending on the indexes they had. But a lot of times you had illustrations of 8, 9%. And AG 49 came on the scene and said, you know what, we need to have a more centralized way to show these illustrations. We need to have some sort of guidance on how you arrive at an illustrated rate. So that's what AG 49 did. And that, again, that was implemented several years ago. But carriers got creative and they found ways to kind of skirt around the AG 49 guidelines, and said, you know what, we're going to have these different multipliers and buy-up cap rates. And so that led to some carriers really being illustrated beyond the scope of what AG 49 originally had intended to. And so that's why we had new regulation in late last year with AG 49A, and it limited the ability to illustrate the buy-up cap rates and multipliers that we saw with some carriers. Another thing that was important that AG 49A did is it limited loan arbitrage. So prior to AG 49A, when I was showing income from an IUL, I could have an arbitrage in that loan income of up to 100 basis points. Well, now the maximum I can show is 50 basis points. What it did not change, it didn't change the existence of these buy-up caps and multipliers. So some carriers still have them. You just can't illustrate them, right? So, they're kind of working behind the scenes in a carrier's product. And so, again, the reason for these changes was to try and bring, back some of these IULs that had, for lack of a better term, gone out in left field, bring them back down to earth and say, okay, we need to have more regulation, more centralized way of illustrating this, more consensus amongst the carriers. And again, those were the changes that went in force late last year. And I want to show you this product position slide because I want to highlight how it impacted North American in our accumulation IUL, the Builder Plus 2. So prior to these changes last year, you could see that our IUL would have been ranked number 11. And again, that's because a lot of these carriers ahead of us had those multipliers and buy-up options that were illustrating to their advantage, right? And of course, we know that there's a cost with that. So then after AG 49A was implemented, you can see how North American goes from number 11 to number 5 now. Again, because a lot of these carriers were no longer able to illustrate that with the new regulation, and so it made our product a lot more competitive. And I'll circle back to our current product positioning in a second, but I do want to touch on the other thing that we saw happen last year, and this is really a last-minute thing with the Consolidated Appropriations Act. It was kind of snuck in there at the very end. A lot of carriers didn't expect it. You know, there were some lobbyists that were working on it. But what this did is it really changed the way that carriers, run their interest rate calculations, especially as it relates to cash value products. So, a real simplified way of thinking about this was carriers were having to project, a 4% interest rate built into their products, and they were saying that's not fair, because with the low interest rate environment, we should really have a lower interest rate projection. And again, with the passing of the Consolidated Appropriations Act, changes to 7702, which is the life insurance tax code, were implemented, allowing carriers to reduce that interest rate assumption in a lot of cases down to 2%, which is extremely, again, advantageous to the carrier. And doing that calculations, well, in plain English, that means that we are going to see better cash accumulation. So, for example, if I was funding an IUL, and let's just say, at $10,000 a year ago, right? I would run an illustration and get X amount for face. Now, fast forward to today in a post 7702 world, I can fund that IUL with the same 10,000. My face will likely be cut in half because, again, we're not assuming that higher interest rate behind the scenes. It's a lower interest rate, which will allow for better cash accumulation. So if I'm a consumer, this is a huge win for me because I'm going to see better cash value in my product going forward. So you can see here
Andrew,
on the slide. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but if I could just jump in for a quick second just to make a point, and I know that you'll reiterate this point throughout your presentation as well as an opportunity, but regardless of your political party affiliation, I think one thing that everybody can agree on politically is Washington is crazy and unpredictable, and we don't know what's going to happen to tax rates in the future. So there was already plenty of reason to look at life insurance as part of your supplemental retirement planning due to the tax advantages of life insurance. But this regulation, as carriers start to implement this throughout the year, this makes life insurance an even more attractive vehicle to save money towards retirement, because when you have a higher amount of premium that you can put in for a lower face amount, you have leverage over those internal costs, and your percentage of cost compared to the value in your contract is going to be decrease even further. So life insurance, essentially, in these types of situations, is getting less expensive. So, sorry, I just wanted to kind of...
Exactly. No.
Yeah.
Great points, and you're right. Life insurance got more attractive. Cash value life insurance got more attractive. So you're going to see, carriers are starting to implement these changes. They have the entire year to do this. So it's not like carriers automatically flip the switch as soon as this happened. There's a lot of planning behind the scenes that carriers have to do to redo their product portfolio, essentially. So again, I think you're going to see whole life carriers probably make the changes first. IUL, VUL carriers probably be soon to follow, ourselves included. But what you can see what it's done here is it allowed an increase in the guideline level premium in GLP, guideline single premium increase there, increase in CVAC corridor. So again, in short, it means you can put more money into a product, more cash value, better income. This is a huge win, but it's not all roses. There's some things that come along with these changes, especially from a carrier perspective. Okay, so for example, I just a minute ago I said that in a pre 7702 change world, I could fund an IUL with $10,000 of annual premium. I would get X amount of face. Now, if I do that same funding scenario in a post-7702 environment, of course, my face will be decreased, which allows for more cash accumulation. But what also happens when that face amount decreases? Well, one, as a consumer, I do lose some death benefit protection, right? Now, that may not be the reason I bought a cash value product to begin with, so maybe I'm not too concerned with that. But as an agent, what happens when face amounts decrease? The target premium also decreases. So that means my compensation will decrease as well, right? Does that mean, and this is big question marks that carriers have, is there going to be a decrease in sales if the compensation we're paying agents goes down, right? And a lot of people think, well, carriers, why don't you just increase, the targets? I know the face amounts are going down, but why don't you just increase the targets? What also happens when the face amount goes down is the cost of insurance goes down, i.e. revenue to the life insurance carriers. So revenue to life insurance carriers is going to go down. So it's not as simple as carriers just kind of flipping a switch and saying, oh, well, just increase target premiums. Where's that money going to come from to pay for that? So these are questions, again, more so on a carrier that they're thinking about is when we redesign our products to be 7702 compliant, how are we going to answer these questions? How are we going to address the target premium situation? Actually, I do believe the first carrier to market with these changes in the IUL space, I believe is Symetra, and that is happening tomorrow. In fact, and they've already alerted that their target premiums are going to decrease on average, I think, 35%. So again, this is something that is going to happen. The question is how carriers are going to react, right? What changes are going to do to try and address the compensation issue. So for the consumer, huge win. For the agent, I think more to come, right, on how this affects compensation. For carriers, products are getting more attractive, but again, revenue is going to be decreased with lower COIs, and I think carriers are going to have to address the target premium issue going forward. So certainly it's going to be a balance. More to come on that. As far as where North American is, we have not yet rolled out our 7702 changes. You'll see that later in the year, and I think we're looking at the landscape first to see where other carriers land to figure out how we can best address that.
Andrew, just one more thing on the compensation issue, and we don't have to belabor this point because these changes actually haven't been implemented yet. But North American, as a carrier in particular, does have 4 different commission options, and some of them are more commission on the back end. And wouldn't be as effective as much, if that's fair to say. Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but would not be as affected as much by lower target premiums. So if you are somebody who plans to be in business for a while and can stretch out their compensation for a longer period of time to receive more in the end, that might be something to look at as well.
Get paid more. How that will be impacted is that's actually going to pay more. If you think about it, better cash value means that higher asset trail compensation. So again, I suspect some producers are gonna maybe flock to that and say, oh my gosh, this just got even more attractive, this type of compensation, and I'm going to make more in the long term. So you're absolutely right. We already have that. A lot of carriers don't, so they'll probably have to implement some form of that or go to the drawing board as it relates to that. Moving on, as Tim mentioned, we did launch just a few weeks ago, in fact, our new proprietary index, the Fidelity Multi-Factor Yield Index 5% ER. So I know it's a mouthful. I often just refer to it as the Fidelity Index or the Volatility Control Index. I told you earlier, I circled back to this product position slide because I did want to show you, again, where we're at. All the way on the left, that was pre-AG49 changes, North American number 11. After AG49 changes were implemented, we came up to number 5. And then, January 25th, we launched our Volatility Control Index, which made our products more competitive, moving us to that number 3 spot. Only carrier in front of us was Global Atlantic. Well, Global Atlantic just recently announced cap reduction, and fast forward all the way on the right, where we find ourselves today, we're in the number 1 spot. So great spot to be in. Of course, this isn't across every single age or every single cell. I'm sure there's some cells where we'd be number 2 or number 3. Suffice to say that our product today is extremely competitive, and no doubt thanks to this new index that we launched. It's a multi-factor index, which means that it invests in different, it balances the weight between different, things like high dividend, momentum, value, quality, low volatility, small and mid-size type businesses. That's what it's targeting, right? Also, one of the benefits is at any given point in time, it can really move over between treasuries and cash, which helps, the index basically is a moving target. So as it sees what's happening in the market and the economy, this multi-factor yield index can really adjust itself accordingly. Again, here you can see the breakdown of those multi-factors and how that works. You can always go to the Fidelity website to get more information on this. But here's what I like to talk about is first off, what products is this index even on? Our entire IUL portfolio. So our Builder Plus 2, which is the accumulation product I've been talking about here, but it's also on our GIUL product, that protection builder product, and our Smart Builder product, which is meant more for single premium type scenarios, all 3 of these products. Now, the number 1 question I get is, Andrew, on your annual point-to-point S&P 500, I can illustrate 5.91, and on this new index, the Fidelity Index, I'm only allowed to illustrate 5.63. Why wouldn't I choose 5.91? That seems to be a better number. Although it's higher, it does have an asset-based charge, and that is, at least for the Builder Plus 2, you can see that's 80 bips. On our Volatility Control Index, the Fidelity Index, that asset-based charge is 0. So although 5.91 is higher, once you net out the charges, it's actually lower, and that's why this Volatility Control Index performs much better. There is no cap on it, just a participation rate, and that's currently at 135%. How can we afford to have that 0% asset-based charge? The reason being is that, and if some of you are familiar with volatility control indices, you already know this, the option costs are extremely low compared to an option cost that a carrier spends on an annual point-to-point S&P 500. So we've taken the savings from the low option cost from the Fidelity Index, passed that on to the consumer by having that 0% asset-based charge. Why would you use a volatility control index? Simply put, it gives you more stability, better diversification, and we're going to see here in a second, higher performance. So S&P 500, and I'll circle back on this, but you're going to have higher highs, but you're also going to have lower lows. If you're looking for something steady, that's more stable, this is the index to choose for that. And like I said, on performance, when you look back at the S&P 500 with our current cap of 9.5%, you can see the 10-year look back, what that looks like, 7.53 versus the Fidelity with our current 135% participation rate, that would have averaged a 9.37%. So again, performance does not suffer when using the volatility control index. And the best way that I can try and explain this, and I have been using this example, this analogy, is when people think of Babe Ruth, they think home run hitter, great baseball player. In 1923, Babe Ruth held the record for the most home runs that season. But probably a lesser known fact is that same year, he also held the record for the most strikeouts. Now, on the right here, you have Ty Cobb, who's pictured. Now, Ty Cobb was not known as a huge home run hitter. In fact, in the 1920s, that same era, he averaged probably 4 or 5 home runs a season, right? Compared to the Babe, who was knocking them out of the park, it seems like, all the time. But Ty Cobb ended his career with the highest batting average of any player in Major League Baseball, and that still stands. That record still stands today. We all know that Babe Ruth's, home run record has since been surpassed. But again, Ty Cobb, he was a better hitter, had the highest batting average, and still stands to this day in Major League Baseball. So when we think about, the volatility control index versus an S&P annual point-to-point index, right? It's, would you rather have something that's going to give you some home runs occasionally, but also is going to give you more strikeouts, versus something that's more consistent, that's more reliable? And I think that's really the story on why you would choose and use the volatility control index, is because you're looking for returns. You're not going to hit it out of the ballpark every single time, but you're also going to look at annual statements that provide something, right? So you're not going to have as many zeros as you would have on the S&P 500 annual point-to-point. In fact, there are years where the S&P index has hit zero, and the Fidelity index still provides a positive return. So again, when people ask me, now that with our new index, why would we use this? Why would we illustrate this? I think this is the reason why. So lastly, like I said, I wanted to highlight not just, some of the regulation changes, IUL, and then our new index, but what are the opportunities, right? Where we find ourselves today, still in Q1 of 2021, COVID is still, around and probably will be for the foreseeable future. But there's still some planning opportunities. There's still some life insurance opportunities that exist out there. And let's look at just a couple. I think, 2021 is really going to be the perfect storm for life insurance opportunities. Well, Andrew, why do you say that? The reason I believe that is if you look, again, at the markets and the economy, last year, while markets, performed well, we still saw a lot of volatility in the market space, especially, when the market hit its low point, I believe on March 23rd of 2020. People were wondering, is it going to go down further? Is it going to bounce back? There was a lot of volatility in the marketplace, and I think we're still going to continue to see that going forward. The economy, we know that it's certainly been impacted by COVID, and it's not as quick to rebuild as I think we'd all like it to be. Certainly, when you think about certain industries like hospitality, travel, restaurant business, et cetera, it could be a while before a lot of these businesses bounce back. Consumer needs, right? That's changing. Consumer needs, what consumers prioritize. I think COVID has made a lot of consumers realize that, hey, I need life insurance. I need to think about my own mortality. We saw that in North American last year with the increased sales, certainly in our protection products, because more people had their mortality top of mind. They were thinking about, oh my gosh, am I planning for this? Is my family, if I were to pass away, do they have enough money? People were thinking about that a lot more last year than they traditionally were. And again, we saw that in the life insurance sales. With this new administration, as Tim mentioned, what side of the aisle you're on, I think you have to recognize that, one, we do have a new administration, and there's going to be new tax policy, there's going to be new fiscal policy related to that. We've already seen, some of that announced, and I think it's going to play out here in the coming months, certainly during this first term, is what's going to happen to tax rates. What's going to happen to things like the estate tax, individual income tax rates. So, whatever it is, I think we're going to see an impact on that. And one thing that I think, everyone will probably agree on is, again, regardless of what side of the aisle people are on, I think in general, most people that I talk to agree that in the future, as we continue to go in the future, tax rates are probably going to get higher because we're at historically low tax rates today. If you were to look at tax rates historically over the last 100 years, we're at a very low spot today, especially considering the amount of debt we have in this country. And so the only way to possibly fulfill any of those obligations we have is for tax rates to go up in the future. And I think, again, with this current administration, it's probably going to be expedited. estate tax, which really hasn't impacted a lot of people because it's set so high currently. I think we're going to see that come back down to levels maybe that we saw a couple of years ago, if not lower. And now that's going to create a lot of planning opportunities for families that didn't think they were, uber wealthy. But if they just have a couple $1 million, sitting around in retirement accounts or whatnot, they're going to really question and say, you know what, do we have life insurance to help offset estate taxes that we might owe in the future? And I think, again, this really provides an opportunity for insurance-based wealth management solutions. On a personal level, I think, the impact of taxes and higher taxes, no one is a fan of. At least on a professional level, we've got to recognize that this is really going to lead to a lot of life insurance-based sales. So let's first look at a protection opportunity, right? What's a protection opportunity that's out there? Certainly, these are clients that are death benefit or legacy oriented, right? These are clients that are saying, you know what, I'm buying life insurance first and foremost because I need there to be a death benefit that's going to pay out, when I die. Because of that, they're typically older clients, right? 55 years of age or older is typically what we see for these types of clients. A lot of times the opportunity arises from a client review because they've got old adjustable life policies that are falling apart, that were sold to them when interest rates were out of this world. And because of the high interest rate, the policy was assumed to last forever. And now we find ourselves in a low interest rate environment. Again, these policies are imploding. And a client review is a great way to uncover these opportunities and say, you know what, we need to get you out of this policy. We need to do 1035 into something that makes sense. And so a lot of times you can take, during a client review, you can take the client's existing policy and save them money. You can get them the same death benefit for less premium. If they're comfortable paying the premium, a lot of times you say, you know what, I can get you more death benefit, more protection for the same amount of premium you have today. I can get you guarantees that will last longer, or perhaps one thing that you're interested in is living benefits, right? I put CCT because that stands for North American's Critical, Chronic, and Terminal Illness Riders that are included on our IUL portfolio. And so, again, clients might be interested and say, you know what, this life insurance policy I have doesn't have a chronic illness rider, and I'm worried because maybe they've seen mom or dad in a nursing home. Maybe they've seen mom or dad suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia, and they recognize the financial cost and impact it's had, and they want a life insurance policy that can assist with that as well. So again, the protection opportunity exists out there. It's just a matter of asking the right questions to find out how you can assist those clients. Here's an example here. We call this protected portfolio, where you've got a 60-year-old female and she's got $1 million in AUM money, right? Assets under management, invested. And her goal is really, with this $1 million, is to provide a legacy to her heirs. So she's likely not using it for income in retirement. She's saying, you know what, this $1 million, I want it to pass on to kids, to grandkids, whoever it is that she's identified. And so we can see here how life insurance can assist in providing that, legacy type planning scenario, where this, agent can just approach this client and say, you know what, I know you've got $1 million and you've earmarked it for, kids, grandkids, charity, whoever that is. If we just tap into 3% of that, 3%, right? So we're not going to touch 97%, 3%. We're going to use that to buy a guaranteed death benefit life insurance policy. And you can see here in this example that the $1 million, assuming a 5% rate of return, you can see how that would grow over the next, 25, 30 years plus. Instead, if we use just 3% over 10 years to purchase a guaranteed death benefit life insurance policy, in addition to her portfolio, you can see that green line, how much more value she has. So if she were to die, especially in those early years, she would pass on a much greater legacy to her heirs, to her beneficiaries. And oh, by the way, what happens if the market completely tanks? That blue line, that's going down. that green line, the portion that's invested will go down, but that guaranteed death benefit will never decrease regardless of what happens with her invested assets. In addition to that, that green line, what is it also providing? Those living benefits we talked about, the critical, chronic, and terminal illness rider, should she need to tap into that, right? If something happens to her along the way, she can accelerate a portion of that death benefit to pay for medical expenses. Like I said, it's got volatility protection. It avoids probate because it's a tax-free death benefit. So once she passes on, she doesn't have to worry about that with her life insurance. So life insurance is a great way to have, that conversation with someone who's older, who's looking to pass on money, and that money is sitting, in a taxable account or invested assets, to say, you know what, let's just carve off a portion of it, use it to buy life insurance, and here's why that makes sense. Here's another type scenario, and it's certainly one we saw a lot of last year, and it's related to what we saw happen with the stretch IRA, and that being eliminated. That happened, again, at the beginning of last year with the passing of the Secure Act. And so normally what would happen is a non-spousal beneficiary, so a mother naming a daughter like we see here, could have been a father naming a son, could be a grandkid, could have been a trust, right? Anyone who's a non-spousal beneficiary. Well, prior to the passing of the Secure Act, you could do that, and that would probably be the preferred method of transferring this type of wealth, right, of leaving this type of legacy. Because in this example here with Anne, the mother, 7 years old, Grace, the daughter, who's 40 years old, $250,000 in a qualified IRA, prior to the Secure Act, if Anne were to have passed away, Grace would have received what's called, a stretch IRA, which means that Grace would have taken that $250,000 and she would be able to stretch for the rest of her life, taking income from that. And the benefit of stretching that out is it minimizes the tax impact on her. Well, that was eliminated. And now, where we find ourselves today, if this were to happen, if Anne names Grace as a beneficiary, Anne passes away, Grace only has 10 years to take the money out. And so if I'm Grace, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this money's never been taxed before. Mom named me as beneficiary. I've got 10 years. What impact is that going to have on my income and my tax level, especially going to go up in the future? That's not ideal. That's not ideal planning today. Life insurance is a great way to take these types of scenarios and say, you know what? There's a better way to leave a legacy. There's a better way to plan around this. Instead, if Anne had done the planning today and said, you know what? Before I die and leave Grace with $250,000 in a qualified IRA, why don't I take the funds out, pay taxes today, while taxes are a historically low rate today. We're assuming 25% tax here in this example, and takes that net amount, puts it into a guaranteed life insurance policy, and is able to provide over $336,000 in a tax-free death benefit. If I'm Grace, would I rather have $250,000 that is not been taxed and is going to impact my tax rate? Or if I'm Grace, would I rather have $336,000 in a tax-free death benefit passed on to me when mom passes away? Of course, I'd choose the latter, right? And so again, there's a lot of this planning opportunity that has arisen post the Secure Act passing. So if you have conversations with clients who have IRAs, ask them, who's the beneficiary of that IRA and what is the goal? How, is the goal that you want to transfer that money, that you want to leave a legacy, that you want to pass on that wealth? If so, let's talk about a better solution. The product that I'm highlighting here is our Protection Builder IUL product. Again, it's really meant for protection type scenarios. It's got a guaranteed death benefit that you can dial all the way to age 120, but it's still on an IUL chassis, so it has that upside potential. It does have the ability to illustrate that new fidelity index as well that I mentioned, and it includes the living benefits to critical, chronic, and terminal illness riders. I didn't highlight this, but this is a really cool feature. There's also an ROP feature that says if the client wants to walk away in year 15, they can get 50% of their premiums back, or in years 20 or 25, they can get 100%. So in any of the examples I just highlighted, if those clients wanted to walk away 20 years into the future, they would get all their money back as well. So it's a nice exit strategy should their goals change in the future. The next opportunity I want to highlight, we talked about the protection opportunity. What about the accumulation opportunity? We see this especially with high income earners and business owners. In fact, I think our most successful sales in 2020 came from the business market. Typically, these are clients that are ages 35 to 55, and the reason being is when you're looking to accumulate, right, you got to be young enough to have years of accumulation. We don't generally see someone who's 70 wanting to accumulate because they're already, in retirement. But it's also those clients that are looking for tax diversification, asset diversification, right? They recognize that life insurance is a non-correlated asset, i.e. it's not tied to the market. And they're saying, you know what? I think taxes are going to go up in the future. And all my eggs are in one basket. All my eggs are in a qualified plan. All my eggs are in something that is going to be taxed in the future. Is there a way that I can diversify my assets and have some of my money in a qualified plan that'll be taxed in the future, but I'd also like to carve out some money and have it be grow tax deferred and have income be tax free. Life insurance is the only thing that can provide a tax free death benefit, tax deferred growth, and tax free income. I mentioned the business market is a great opportunity for this. Here's just an example, and this is a real life case that I had last year that was really successful. I obviously changed the names, just to protect the people involved here. But we're looking at a 40-year-old male who owns a technology business, and he wants a supplemental retirement plan because he recognizes, you know what? I'm already maxing out my 401k. I'm making a lot of money. I really need to be saving more for retirement because if all I have is my 401k, it's not going to get me there. Is there something else that I can do just for me? Because I don't want to offer, an additional plan to all of my employees. So we got Jimmy, CEO, who's looking at that. And meanwhile, one of his lead tech developers, 35-year-old, is really valuable to the business, right? He's developed an app that has led to increased sales, to business growth. And Jimmy, who's the CEO, recognizes, man, I gotta retain Peter. He's really important to this business. Is there a way that I can do that? Because I don't want him to go work for the competition. Well, for Jimmy, the CEO, what he did is he created an additional source of retirement income. He added tax diversification to his financial plan. He said, I can use life insurance as a tool that's not going to limit me in my contribution. He tells me how much I can contribute. But with life insurance, I can put in as much money as I want. By the way, because this is personally owned, I've got creditor protection. Now that does differ state by state, but most states, life insurance, the cash values, the death benefit, it's all creditor protected, which as a business owner is really important because they can't come after that. And it adds living benefits. Again, I highlighted that, the critical, chronic, and terminal illness rider. And so for Jimmy, CEO, we were able to provide, life insurance retirement plan, or, a lot of people call it a LIRP, and do this so that he could really fund the policy and fund supplemental retirement income for himself. Meanwhile, for Peter, who was, a key asset to this business, for the business, they said, you know what? We're going to use life insurance as a way to retain, reward, and hopefully retire this individual, right? We hope that Peter sticks around, and this is the company he works for the rest of his life. We hope he retires from here, but more importantly, we found a way to keep him around and incentivize him to do that, and it provides a tax deduction for the business. And for Peter, putting an executive bonus plan in place, again, like I said, it incentivized him to stay. It provided, death benefit protection and the ability to accumulate cash. So the business max funded an IUL. Again, this was employer-sponsored, employee-owned, And so it's just an added benefit for Peter. And he recognized, man, they really value what I do here. And every year that I stick around, they're going to fund this thing, and it's just going to grow, and it's going to grow, and it's going to grow, and I can use that in the future for retirement. And like I said, for the business, it was a way to kind of handcuff him, a golden handcuff, Peter, to the business while providing that tax deduction at the same time. The product we utilized was our Builder Plus 2. That's our Accumulation IUL product. These are just some of the competitive advantages that you see here. For the sake of time, I won't go through all of them. But again, our new Volatility Control Index is offered on this product, which is right now allowing it really to be illustrated number one in the accumulation IUL space. And by the way, last year we did increase the producer comp on this product. So not only is it the number one product in performance right now, but it is going to be one of the highest paying IULs in the market to you, the producer. And then lastly, the other opportunity I wanted to highlight in closing is the smart money opportunity. And many of you, if you've heard me talk in the past, have maybe heard me talk about this concept or this solution. It's really meant for clients that are looking for liquidity or have liquidity need, and they're not satisfied with their lazy money solutions. Lazy money, when I talk about that, I'm talking about money that's sitting under the mattress, money that's in a savings account, bank account, maybe it's an annuity, a CD. It's one of those liquid places, but it's not really doing a lot for the client. It's not really returning a lot, especially with low interest rates today. Those types of those solutions aren't providing much return for the client. Because there is that liquidity need, we typically see clients that are older that are looking for this type of solution. And I put CCT on there as well because generally speaking, older clients are also concerned about their health in the future and healthcare costs. And so having a critical chronic and terminal illness rider is very crucial. This example here is going to highlight how the smart money concept, the smart money opportunity plays out. So we got a 65-year-old female. She's got $250,000, again, in lazy assets, so that could be in a CD, money market. It's not really earning a lot. She wishes she could have more upside potential, but she doesn't want to take that much risk. And that brings us back to the liquidity thing she's worried about, right? She recognizes, hey, I can't have these funds tied up forever. I do need access to them down the road if something were to happen in an emergency. With using our Smart Builder, North American Smart Builder IUL product, if you put $250,000 in there, you have on a guaranteed basis that you have 97% cash surrender value in year one. So 97% of your cash that you put in there is available to you immediately. By year three, you've got full cost recovery plus some. And for the remainder of your life expectancy, you're above that $250,000 amount. And that blue line, by the way, is not just assuming the lowest amount of crediting, it's also assuming the highest amount of charges that we can charge you as a carrier. And by the way, we've never increased our COIs on an in-force block of business before. But I like to highlight that because it means that even in the worst case scenario, I've got liquidity. Even in the worst case scenario, I'm going to get my money back here in a couple of years and some on top of that. What's a more realistic scenario is what we see in those two lines above that, with a very conservative 3.5% and a modest 5% return. And by the way, that new Fidelity Index is included and offered on this product. Again, what's more realistic are those other lines, and that performance far outweighs or outpaces what you'd see in a money market, in a CD, in many annuities. And so again, we see a lot of clients that they have money sitting on the sidelines, and they say, you know what, putting it in this product absolutely makes sense because it provides that liquidity that I need, but also the upside potential that I desire. And by the way, I haven't even talked about that yellow line at the top, which is the death benefit that I have. So talk about the leverage that you get, right? Dumping $250,000 and day one, I've got over $550,000 in death benefit. That is not just giving me liquidity, that is giving me leverage. Not just leverage if I die, but leverage if I get sick, because those accelerated death benefit riders, right, the critical, chronic, and terminal illness, I get to utilize that higher yellow line for those riders. So again, if I get sick, I get to tap into that $550,000 plus of death benefit to accelerate, help offset medical expenses. So this is a great product. The Smart Builder IUL is a great product for those looking for single premium, liquidity, legacy type solutions. The reason the cash value is so attractive is we have a 0% premium load on this product. As far as I'm concerned, I believe it's the only 0% premium load life insurance product in the marketplace. Like I mentioned, it's on an index chassis, so it provides upside potential. It includes that volatility control index. There's an optional waiver of surrender charge. I didn't use that in my example because I think that 97% cash surrender value is very attractive. But if someone came to me and said, Andrew, I need 100% cash surrender value on day one, we do have an additional rider that you can tack on that will provide 100%. So if you dump in 250, you have 250 available right out of the gate. Long-term performance won't be as attractive, but the upfront, liquidity is there. 97% cash surrender value is attractive enough, and long-term performance far outpaces if you use a rider. The compensation, you can have asset-based trail comp, you can do upfront comp, and again, that's for all of our products, as Tim mentioned earlier, one of the few carriers that provides that. So in closing, I know I covered a lot. I talked about the regulatory changes. I highlighted our new Fidelity Index, and I've talked about protection opportunities, accumulation opportunities. But my hope is that in going through that you recognize some clients that this would be a good fit, right? For the client, one of these opportunities, could help protect legacy. It could help them accumulate wealth. It could help them leverage the liquidity they have. For you, the producer, my hope is that this is an opportunity to engage clients, maybe go through your existing book of business and say, you know what, I need to have a conversation with so-and-so about this, identify solutions that work for them. Next steps, I would encourage you, again, identify clients who you can have a conversation with. Think about who you can approach. Maybe it's not an existing client and it's someone that you want to obtain as a client. Maybe this will give you the foot in the door to have that conversation with them. Work with financial brokers. They can help you with any illustrations, any marketing material, product material, anything that you need. They are here to support you. And lastly, again, my hope is that you can present this to your clients. So again, I know we're almost here up on the full hour. I can't thank you enough, again, for taking time out of your busy day to hear me talk about these opportunities. But with that, I will turn it over to Tim if anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Andrew. We do have a couple of questions. So first question, it says, does 0% premium load mean the client will not be charged for agent commission? So maybe you can weigh in on how that 0% premium load affects the performance of the policy, and maybe where the client or the company North American is actually getting the profit margin in that product and how it's designed. With the caveat that neither one of us are actuaries.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 0% premium load is again, not having that is what allows for the cash accumulation to be very attractive. But there's still other charges in the product, right? Typical COI charges in the product. So we are getting our revenue as a carrier in some fashion. As far as that, how that impacts the client, it impacts the client in a positive way, right? Because they have higher cash surrender value. As far as how it impacts the producer, there would be a chargeback in year one. So there would be a chargeback in year one to the producer if the client said, man, I've got full liquidity, 6 months in, I'm out of here. Well, unfortunately, there'd be a chargeback to the producer. Outside of year one, though, like let's say we get to year two and the client says, you know what, I'm satisfied with what I've gotten here and I want to, liquidate the policy, there wouldn't be a chargeback. So I know some other products in the market might have like a 3-year chargeback or that. Again, we just have the 1 year.
Thank you. And the next question, I believe I can answer. Was it the protection builder that had the return of premium? And that is correct. After 15 years, it's 50%. 20 and 25 years, it's 100% return of premium. And I would also add that product does build cash value. So assuming that it performs well, you should actually, especially by year 20 and 25, you should have more cash value in there theoretically, depending on how you design it and fund it. But theoretically, you'd have more cash value than premiums paid. So you'd have additional liquidity options there. And I really view those return of premium options as worst case scenario. Let's say whatever happens, it could be a variety of things, but really bad things happen, policy doesn't perform as well, the client needs that liquidity from the premiums as opposed to the death benefit at that point in their planning stage, and they can just kind of walk away full surrender with either half their premiums coming back or 100% of their premiums coming back. I don't know if you have
absolutely. Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. With just like you said, it's a worst case scenario, right? If the cash isn't there, then at least I know that I still have an exit strategy. I would also highlight, and it's probably more important now than if I had presented on this 6 months ago, is what we've seen from carriers in the guarantee space is them pulling away. In fact, the number one GUL carrier, I think, exited the market in December. And we've heard from other carriers who have exited the GUL market too. So the fact that North American still has a guaranteed product that you can guarantee all the way to age 120 means that we are reaffirming our commitment to this market space. I've talked to our head actuary the other day, and she said, no, we're going to stay in the GUL, GIUL space because we've priced ourselves accordingly, and we made some steps, in years prior to, maintain our portfolio. So again, as carriers are pulling away, you'll find North American is here to stay in that guarantee space.
And one other thing that I'd add there is, we're seeing the protection type IUL products, they become more popular, obviously over the last couple of years for a while, and GULs have kind of exited the space. And a lot of the protection IUL products, it's not necessarily bad or good, but just different. A lot of the protection IUL products will only guarantee the death benefit out to maybe age 85 or maybe age 90, and you're really relying on the cash value on the policy to carry it out past age 100 for those guarantees. And North American's Protection Builder IUL is more unique, and they're one of the few carriers on their protection IUL product that it almost really becomes a true GUL replacement in the fact that that death benefit is guaranteed contractually, not by the policy's cash value, but guaranteed contractually all the way out to age 121 if you choose to do so. And it still adds more liquidity and flexibility options than a true GUL with the cash value and the return premium options. And then I would also add one more thing, that the critical illness, in addition to the chronic and terminal illness, is another thing that makes the product stand out as well. And last question that we had, can I get a copy of the webinar? Absolutely. I'll assume that means we intrigued you. And we did record the webinar. We will be sending out the recording either later today or tomorrow to all of you. So that answers all the questions. I'll just kind of wrap it up with some final thoughts. Temperatures going up in Omaha. I think I see that COVID hospitalizations are going down for the most part. I wouldn't say anything is behind us, but hopefully things in front of us are better than what has been in the recent past. Andrew, I think, did a great job in highlighting some of the opportunities in 2021 relating specifically to life insurance that are especially relevant right now. So let's all get excited to talk to our clients about, implementing that into their plans if they're not aware. One word that is universally common that everybody knows what it means is taxes. And so a A lot of those 2021 planning opportunities relates to your client's tax situation, and they are open to hearing how you can lessen their tax burden in a variety of ways. Andrew shared several ways. So let's talk to our clients about that. Let's go to the Bahamas next year. Let's go fishing in Canada. I'm excited. I hope all of you are as well. Andrew, any final thoughts?
No, I think you nailed it. Appreciate, again, the time to be with you all today.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.